Welcome to Live, Laugh, Launch, the go-to-market podcast for everyone who brings products to life. I'm Katie Moss, and whether you're leading strategy, building campaigns, designing experiences, or figuring out how all the pieces fit together, this show is for you. We explore every angle of go-to-market success, from the big picture thinking to the nitty-gritty execution. Each episode dives into what really works, what doesn't, and how cross-functional teams collaborate to turn ideas into market wins. If you're in marketing, building a startup, or just fascinated by how great products find their audience, you're in the right place. Let's launch into it. Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Live, Laugh, Launch. Today I have with me Tim Bradley. He is the co-founder of Pennant Video, a B2B video agency helping brands like Cisco, Hitachi, and Philips drive mid-funnel growth through powerful storytelling. With nearly 20 years of experience, he's a trusted voice in video marketing and a mentor to emerging creatives. Beyond client work, Tim is an active mentor and LinkedIn creator known for his authentic storytelling and the occasional dad joke. Drawing inspiration from his family, snowboarding, which we just talked about, and the outdoors. So welcome, Tim.
Hey, Katie. Thanks so much. I love that intro.
I'm glad the ChatGPT summarization of your life worked out.
This is the world we live in now. Yep.
Awesome. Well, it's great to have you here and talk a little bit about video and go to market. You obviously, as I said, run a video agency. You see a lot of customer stories up close. What do most companies get wrong about customer storytelling specifically before the camera even turns on?
Customer storytelling. I love that one. Yeah, I think it's a mix of things. One is sort of like the shiny object of the logo, right? Like leading, trying to get the best logos represented, on behalf of the business and the website, right? Like, of course, there's merits within there, right? But often what's overlooked then is really the sort of like pain point and solution set combos in the storytelling, right? So really, I'm always recommending, especially when we come into partners, like talking with either head of sales or sort of whoever's on the front line with these customer or prospective conversations, right? To like really hone into like what are the pains here? Like what are the inflection points? What are the moments that have these prospects like arriving at your doorstep, right? And like those are the best stories, right? And so if you lead with story, you can decide what is the best customer to represent or tell that story, right? And then that becomes that hardworking video, that customer story, that endorsement video, right? That can carry the weight going forward. I think that's the main one. Another is like in the same breath or spirit is like if you've never done a customer story before, right, is like taking a big swing out the jump and trying to get that top tier A-list customer to endorse you basically. If you don't have examples or if you haven't gone through the process of producing a video like that at all, it's a pretty serious undertaking, right? Like there's a lot of trust in the creative process, trust from and on behalf of your customer to like sort of put themselves out there and do this marketing on your behalf, right? So I'm always encouraging folks to like start with not like lesser than customers by any means, but just ones that are like either really tenured or like you have a really close relationship with, and there's that sort of trust to begin with. Get a couple reps or examples or productions under your belt, right? And work through the mechanics of the expression of your brand, the sort of tone and the storytelling and the production value that you want to best represent yourself and your brand and your customer heroes, right? And then again, use those as examples or the sort of like carrot on the strings to get the A tier types of customers to tell their story, Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely makes sense. And I've certainly seen a difference myself in between, writing a case study with a client, usually them checking off, I approve this, or getting a quote where we're like, we need lots of stats and we need to, make sure that we have the data there versus like translating that to a video. The storytelling really is the most important part. So I think that's something good to remember as well. Product marketers, customer marketers that are working with those folks, that those are two very different experiences.
Yeah. Sorry, just to jump in there because you just said this, the written case study is often a really good opportunity to level up into video,
Yeah,
right? 'Cause it's like you've already
absolutely.
got that customer buying, you've already told the story in this medium, right? Now it's like, great, let's take it a step further, which I think is a really strong approach too, strategically.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're helping a client plan a video, maybe a customer story, maybe a brand story, something else, how do you get clarity on who the story is actually for, who the audience is? And what happens when you try to make the audience everyone, or when the client tries to make the audience everyone?
Yeah, that's really tough, right? There's a couple different approaches. One is just like sort of starting at the end, right? Like quite literally, where is this asset going to make the most impact, right? So it's like, is it in the hands of your sales team in, sort of one-on-ones or small closed door situations? Is it at trade shows? Is it on your social channels or probably on your website or on a case study page, like specific, right? So starting there is a really simple way to assure alignment, and then it's sort of that. I always love these because it's kind of that cross section of marketing and sales like coming together where it's like, again, the sales team being on the sort of front lines is like, all right, what are the common pain points that we're hearing? What are the industry segments or the product suite features that we need to like tell better stories around, right? Like those are really good cross sections to understand like how the brand marketing like approaches it. And then it's just the like listening to the customers, right? Like there's probably some semblance of a system of like getting feedback from customers currently, right? And like just
Yeah.
having a finger on the pulse of your current customer set or clients, right? And like understanding what they're hearing and feeling and sensing and what sort of relief is being provided by you as the brand, right, or as the business. So yeah, it's a combination of all of those things, right? And I will say, to put a finer point on it, is like, because you can't tell one story that will be representative or will resonate with everybody, so tell one story that will like make a real impact on that one audience that you're either most likely to support or satisfy or complement really well, or from a strategic standpoint for your business, if it's a new venture, like a new, like you want to break into a new market or industry or segment, right? Like tell that story really well, right? Because it'll just sort of snowball your communication into that new arena,
Yeah, I love your point about how, it's not just marketing. You mentioned sales and others being involved. I think video, when you're using it in a go-to-market capacity, is a great opportunity to work cross-functionally. There's a fine balance between like too many cooks in the kitchen, which is just a death sentence for a good video, I think, and like getting all of the good insights you need.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, obviously the quick plug here is like working with an external creative partner
Yeah.
like Pennant, right? Is like that is an opportunity to bring like objectivity into the equation, or like someone or group or creatives that can really like champion the project, like to assure timeliness and efficiency and creative process and all that, but also just like making sure you have someone that's working really affirmatively on behalf of the audience, right? Like someone that's not as involved in the internal politics of things and all of that, right? So that objectivity carries a lot of weight when it comes to storytelling, I think.
Yeah. You mentioned quite a few different types of videos that I assume we're talking about primarily B2B clients, although it makes sense for B2C as well. What are some opportunities or some gaps that you see where video could solve problems, but people usually don't think about using video in that way?
Yeah, it's and I'll add on to that, I guess. It's kind of like a yes and where
Mm,
a lot of brands be like, well, we have a video. And it's like, well, there's not
yeah.
one video silver bullet situation here, right? So it's like we our sort of like IP here is a framework or sort of like a strategic playbook that assures you're answering the most common FAQs. So that's kind of the main point. Is like, let's answer all the FAQs, smartly, with clarity, and obviously with as much sort of like production value infused that makes it engaging, right? So those FAQs, of course, are like, why do you
Mm,
exist? Why should I care? Why are you different, from others? That differentiation is the main point, right? Demonstration is the other point. Like how, like what do you do and how do you do it? Very simply, right? And then the validation is those customer stories we talked about, right? But that third party validation, that who is this for and where? So hitting those most common FAQs is a really simple and like strategic approach. We call it the video marketing trifecta: differentiation, demonstration, validation, as we just described. In the sort of like deliverables of things, like, are the mechanics, what are the assets that we're talking about here? That differentiation, those are those brand anthem videos, right? Those pieces that really speak to like the hearts of your audience, that they can see themselves in what you represent as a brand, and as, you know, in your mission and values, sort of holistically, right? Those anthemic pieces are really powerful, like front and center on a website, right? Kind of that first thing, like sort of the top of the mid funnel, right? To like draw an audience or a prospective buyer like further into your sort of sphere here. They're also really powerful at like customer events and sales kickoffs and trade show booths and email marketing and et cetera, right? And recruiting, frankly. The demonstrations, the what you do and how you do it, those are your classic explainers, right? And typically when we're working with a brand, they have one for products, for solutions, for industry segments, right? Like for specific pain point and solution solving sets. What's nice about those explainers is that like they're super tactical. They're typically like the next thing a prospective customer is looking for. You know, you're kind of speaking to the minds of this audience at this point, right? And the customer stories, those endorsements, those third party validations, right? Like those are obviously sort of mission critical. The further down this proverbial funnel you've brought this audience at this point, right? Like those are kind of your closers in a lot of ways. So those are the main prongs of that, like that video marketing trifecta, right? But then there's tons of other drumbeat mechanics you can do, like employee spotlights and thought leadership and series and events and employer branding types of work, right? Like we find that type of work, the sort of like bottom of funnels or like beyond sort of like affinity building work, is typically done by in-house creatives or in-house like video teams, because they're like such at the front lines of like what's happening in the business day to day, week over week. You know what I mean? So like having that focus accomplished internally is really important. And then having that objectivity in the kind of mid funnel, working on behalf of this audience you're trying to sell into, is obviously really important. And then your top of funnel awareness, advertising, those are your big splash like campaign moments. Is that helpful?
Yeah. What about onboarding? Not employee, but client onboarding.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, anytime you can infuse that bit of branding to help just like further sort of codify or galvanize that relationship, obviously mission critical, right? So video being the most like powerful and preferred medium by audiences everywhere. So yeah, absolutely. Anywhere you can infuse some of that is great. So yeah, like a welcome message is a really common one at kickoff, like that sort of explainer of what to expect over the course of this engagement, short term or long term, right? Like anytime, and it doesn't have to be like particularly highly produced, but anytime you can, you know, personify your people at your brand and your business, right? Like putting them on camera to, you know, Loom videos or anything like that, just to help like humanize the situation is obviously awesome, you know. We also do a ton of like year-end recaps or like quarterly recap types of situations that are, you know, really like marketing forward, but just sort of like, this is where we've gone as a brand, right? Like, this is like, look at this momentum we've built, or look at these sort of milestones we've accomplished. Like those are always really powerful to like assure sort of like motivation and momentum internally, you know. I could talk ad nauseum about all this.
Well, good thing you're on a podcast, Tim, because
Yeah,
it's
there we
the
go.
perfect opportunity. What about sales teams? We've seen sales start to use video more in recent years. How can they use video in different ways?
Yeah, certainly in those situation to situation moments, right? Like that cross section of like customer storytelling and explainers, right? Like things I always encourage, like if there's a message you find yourself sort of saying time and time and time again, that's a great opportunity to use that to like write a short script and to produce a piece that can help sort of expand yourself. You know what I mean? Like there's that opportunity to get in front of conversations or to plant seeds or to provide like a precursor to a more like in-depth conversation with a prospect, you know? I think, you know, most people have become more comfortable with like talking to the little green dot on their computer and like doing recordings like in a more simple video editing software and things like that, and like even just mobile devices. So I think just the more you spend time like producing and recording and being part of like small modest productions, the better you start to recognize like opportunities for that storytelling, opportunities to like infuse it into your sort of like sales vernacular or playbook. Even just understanding things like lighting and audio and microphones and performance and posture and things like that are obviously all really good for any professional, and they're just like general career development, you know?
Yeah. Is there a point in the buying journey where video storytelling may even work better than like demos or decks? Obviously, the usual B2B sales cycle, you're getting a pitch from a salesperson, unless it's, true SaaS all the way through and self-directed. You're getting a pitch, you're seeing slides. Are there opportunities to inject video in there as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's why we love working in B2B, is that there is that sort of like holistic challenge of like long sales cycles, and like typically multiple stakeholders are involved, the end users, the purse holders, the leadership, you know what I mean? So thinking through all of your ICPs, like any of those, you're going to talk to them differently. You're going to approach the conversation differently. You're therefore going to produce video and approach storytelling differently, right? So I think that's sort of the main moment, is like consider who it is you're talking to most directly, and how might you approach and producing a marketing and sales asset that like helps further that conversation, that helps like just position yourself in their minds as like the differentiated brand to work with, so any and all of those moments, right? And especially like we do a lot of SaaS, we do a lot of hardware, and we work in cybersecurity and green tech, climate tech, healthcare, med tech, right? So it's like there's all sorts of like approaches to these things, but depending on the brand, you can do live action production, you can get your SMEs, your people involved, you can do motion graphics that are really like brand forward, right? Brand identity forward. And like all those are really great. And it's a really simple exercise too, is to like, not that you want to compare, but if you just look across the aisle at your competitors, right? And like see what things are working in their ecosystem, like not necessarily to create the exact same thing, because that doesn't serve anybody, right? But like understanding the mechanics of like, all right, they have an asset here as a touch point with their customers, right? Like, do we have that in our sort of like playbook, or like in the sort of like trust ladder we're building here over the course of like months or a year, or whatever the sales cycle might be,
Yeah. So from my experience, I've seen executives and people across all teams really kind of understand inherently like, okay, we need a brand video, we need like our big story. And then they kind of understand like, oh, we probably need some customer testimonials and things like that, maybe some event videos or demo. But mid funnel sometimes can be a little murky, and sometimes video doesn't get slotted in there. Are there specific kinds of stories or formats that keep buyers engaged at that stage?
When we have a brand approaching us, and like it's usually at some semblance of an inflection point, right? Like they have a new product or new like set of features to a product that they want to showcase. They know they need like updated customer stories, or they have the new logo that they want to showcase via customer story, or they've gone through new positioning, or they're trying to break into a new market or industry. So like those are the moments where we are more often than not engaged with a client. And I think that's because they know that they have this gap of like awareness to close. This consideration phase is where obviously like deals like live and die. So to have like really powerful collateral, e.g. videos, right, to help compound and tell that story and do it in a concise and clarifying way that is repeatable per the medium, you know what I mean? Like that's what's really important. All that's to say, like we often take a bit of caution when a brand that we haven't worked with before, so like they've arrived at our doorstep and we haven't had an engagement previously, they'll be like, oh, we want an anthem video. And that gives us a little pause, because like to express your why is is honestly really difficult, right? It's like there's a lot of stakeholders involved. There's a lot of positioning that needs to get like compressed down to like 60 seconds. Obviously, brand and tone and sentiment and words and sort of, the production value, the motion graphics, whatever it is, like it's a really sort of complicated set of like creative decisions that need to get made. And so we often would prefer to engage at the explainer level, that demonstration level, because like showcasing what you do and how you do it is quite a bit more clear from the jump from a creative process, right? So my point is to like loop it back to your question is like I'd always start at the center. So like the center of the situation is often that explainer, the what you do and how you do it. It's really helpful to sales. It's really clarifying to your audience, right? If you go through the mechanics and creative process of producing one of those, you can recognize like, oh wow, we could do the same for these other products or these other solutions or these other industries, like pretty like efficiently, because we've got the sort of blocking of this piece, right? And then through all of those learnings, and especially if you're working with an outside creative partner, right? Like there's so much learning that happens there in that, again, tone of voice and brand expression and motion design and tonality with music and sound design and just sort of all the awesome parts that comprise a video, you know what I mean? Then take all that knowledge and level up to produce that anthemic piece, that piece that's really meant to, be resonant with the hearts of this audience, So to put a finer point on it is like we all want that like mission driven anthemic piece, but if you haven't produced much video before, I'd caution trying to take that big swing the first time, because it's like perfectly challenging. So start with pieces that are a bit more like in your day-to-day quiver of explainers and customer stories. Things are a bit more like direct or like one-to-one and not like all encompassing of your business.
Yeah, I saw on LinkedIn that I think it was a few weeks ago now. We're in January currently. You made a post about saying no to several clients to start off the year. Is that one of the reasons why you didn't want to jump into kind of those big anthem videos?
No, it was thank you for following, I suppose. But no, it's more just like we are so focused on mid funnel and marketing specifically, right? Like I think those engagements were like social, like doing more social media, like content calendar types of things. That's not our bag. And then I think the other was sort of like a pure event coverage situation. And it's like we can do those, but it's not like where we provide the most sort of like value to a situation or to a customer engagement.
I'm just always interested when folks say no to clients, and
Yeah.
as a consultant myself, obviously we have to say no sometimes. It's not a fit.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know. I've always not that it's like documented very well or anything, but I've always found that it kind of finds its way to come back around where it's like suddenly that prospect is arriving with the need that you can service really well, or they become like a great like referral, like like someone in my network was talking about this and made me think of you and all that. So yeah, I think there is a lot of power in that no, more in like the long term than like the short term necessity of things.
Speaking of no's, sometimes video is not the right asset type to tell a story. How do you know when that's true, and what should teams be thinking about instead?
Yeah, I'd say a lot of the time it's like when there's just so much like data, just like you're just leading with data. And while there's opportunity for storytelling within that data, if you don't have either the right partner or the inside resource to like that sort of storyteller, for lack of better like framing, but like someone that can sort of poke holes at like, well, why does this matter? And then ask why again and ask why again and ask why again to get to sort of like the meat of the situation, right? Otherwise, those facts are great and cool for whatever the situation is, but they might be better served as like a static graphic or like an animated GIF that like is specific to that singular thing. You know what I'm saying? So like an annual report type of thing, right? Yeah, there's tons of opportunity for storytelling in there, but like, is that worthy of like, it'd be a very long video. Whereas like, well, that's why it's a report in this way. And you can carve out, again, like animated GIFs for graphics or things to support the report as a whole, but like having a video for it is a little tough. So that's probably the main one. Yeah.
Okay. From your experience, what makes a customer video feel credible to skeptical B2B buyers instead of like, I know a marketing team produced this and this is super fluffy and
Yeah, no, I love that. Okay, the main take here is like, I'm gonna choose my words here, right? Is like there is a lot of value and merit to having someone jump on Zoom or whatever and like give their quick testimonial. Like obviously that's pretty authentic, like off the cuff, really low brow, like no production, basically, right?
yeah.
My argument to that is like, yeah, but is that really like interesting to the prospects that you're talking to? Probably not. That's obvious. But there's so much like depth to showcasing a relationship when there's like a high degree of production value being used on location at a customer site, pure breadth and showcase of that trust, right? That like, yeah, like we love working with this brand so much that we've invited them onto our location to show our behind the scenes of like what we look like in sort of action, and like showcase how we've benefited from this. And we're willing to sit down in a really uncomfortable situation with multiple lighting and cameras and microphones and to like sort of stick our neck out in this way to go up and to validate what we're talking about here, So I think there's just such like an undercurrent of like relationship that's being showcased there. You know what I mean? So like I hear you on like the marketing fluff. I think there's a lot of like nuance that lives within that when it comes to like your approach, and like making sure that yes, this is your customer telling, their story respectively, but like you need to be thinking about the audience that's watching this and making sure it's valuable to them and their decision making in this journey they've already been on with you per your like video marketing efforts and strategy holistically, So yeah, there's a lot of I don't know. And the last thing there is just like that infusion of the current relationship that you have with that customer, right? Just like what a cool like lived experience to have together to like produce this really impressive showcase story. You know what I mean? So there's so much like depth to it. And as you can tell, I'm very like excited and passionate about it, like when we get to that point. But yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, it's always fun having folks on site, and usually they'll tell you a little bit more as well if you're in person with them and kind of
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. Like I think
relationship.
there's a lot of ease in how we exist sort of day to day, living on Zoom and little like digital blocks and all that. So it's very like easy to achieve. And obviously like costs next to nothing, So there's quite a bit there. But the more like when the right opportunity strike to like invest in that sort of like the relationship, the storytelling, the library, right? Like you capture so much like authentic sort of visuals, like mutually exclusive to what the people are like the clients are saying on film or whatever. But like all those visuals then are just like readily repurposable in all of your marketing collateral, and nobody else owns that, right? Like it's not like some stock that you see on like 4 or 5 of your competitor sites. It's like, no, this is yours and they can't take that from you.
Yeah, love it. So if a go-to-market leader listening today could fix just one storytelling or video gap this quarter, what should they focus on first?
Ooh, good one. I'm gonna try to answer. I'm gonna have 2 answers, but I'm gonna try to keep them short. The first one is those customer stories, right? It's such a good sort of regular cycle to find yourself in. Like you can always be sort of like vying for the opportunities via the sales team or the customer management team or account team or whatever the situation is, right? Like being sort of on the front lines of what's new and novel and happening, like getting a better understanding of those customers, like holistic sort of industry cycles to things, right? And like when to sort of like make the ask in the moment, and then just getting the reps in, honestly, like just builds the sort of confidence of production and interview question development and like the management of this sort of the relationship holistically, right? So that's I would do that early, often, and always, I guess.
Yeah.
My other thing is like just paying attention to your library, your asset library, like being really like thoughtful to how you organize that. Like you get as in depth as like the metadata and tagging of things, sure, but just like being conscious and aware of like all the amazing visuals that you've accumulated over the years, right? Because like the more you're familiar with what you already have, the more you can recognize the opportunity to A, repurpose, and B, build on that. Like, great, like we have tons of visuals within this industry segment. and not enough here, like this helps us align on like where to focus this next quarter, like where to keep like building and sort of compounding the efforts that we have in our library. So yeah, I think that's probably a pretty common pitfall is people like, great, receive all the visuals, and then they just like kind of forget about it, like on to the next. Like we're all busy, I get it, but like if you can be conscious and cognizant to like take care of that library, you'll recognize the opportunities to build on it and to repurpose and to just like continue to showcase the efforts in the visuals, you know?
Yeah. And I think, you know, to that point, customer stories are certainly more evergreen than like the big brand stories or even demonstrations and things like that. So they can last you a lot longer and be repurposed a lot more. So that's good.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I've always found like the customer stories, because they're based on a story, like they tend to last like quite a while. Sure, like the production value might fade over time, or like, you know, maybe that customer eventually churns and isn't a customer anymore. Like those things obviously happen, especially in B2B, but like the story maintains. And you're right, like we find the sort of explainers that we produce tend to not like redo them, but reapproach them like every couple of years, because like UI changes if we're talking SaaS or whatever, right? Or like, you know, there's new features and things like that. And yeah, those anthemic pieces are usually specific to a brand's like positioning and like the tone of voice for the moment, you know, and that too should appropriately evolve, you know? Yeah. Love it.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit more about Pennant, where people can find you. If they want to contact you on LinkedIn, where should they go?
Yeah. So we're at Pennant. It's like the flag, pennantvideo.com or pennant.video. I've got that cool vanity URL for something, you know? And then, yeah, I'm on LinkedIn very actively. So Tim Bradley Pennant is probably the fastest way there. Also on our website, we're actually like in the midst of a new website. So we're sort of depending on when this episode launches, but we currently have a ungated playbook of sorts that talks about the sort of funnel focus, right? Just sort of like where video marketing can like support the different stages of your marketing funnel. Folks are welcome to grab that. It's a PDF. There's a sort of there's a fun quiz in there too. Just sort of just helps you understand like where you might be respective to your video marketing efforts.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining today, Tim. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Katie. This was fun.
All right. Bye, everyone.